Lily Harper had it all: money, luxury, a mansion overlooking the city, designer clothes, and a future paved with power. But behind the picture-perfect smile and endless privilege, she was suffocating. Imagine being the only child of one of the wealthiest men in the country. Your father, Richard Harper, is a self-made billionaire who built his empire from scratch. His life is a testament to success. Everything he touches turns to gold. But for Lily, his only daughter, life feels like a carefully constructed prison. Every corner of her life screams luxury. Her childhood was spent in private schools, exclusive vacations, and attending high-society events where the most important people in the world swirled around her. To the outside world, it seemed like a dream life. But for Lily, it was all too much. She was expected to carry the weight of her father's legacy, marry a wealthy man, and follow in his footsteps. The future dictated every move she made, and Richard had already decided for her. And then, it happened. Her father, always the businessman, arranged a marriage between Lily and the son of another powerful family, wealthy, well-connected, and groomed to fit into the Harper legacy. This wasn't about love, it was about securing the Harper name for generations. Lily knew what was at stake. Her future had already been planned, but what about her happiness? Then, everything changed when she met James. At first glance, James seemed like just another guy, young, somewhat charming, and clearly from a different world. He didn't belong in her perfect life, but that's exactly why she was drawn to him. James didn't see her as the billionaire's daughter. He didn't want her because of her father's wealth. He made her feel like an individual, not a pawn in some high-society chess game. They shared the same dream: freedom. He wanted out of the grind of life that people like her father created, and she wanted to escape from the future her father was trying to force on her. On the night she was supposed to announce her engagement to the wealthy suitor her father had chosen for her, Lily decided to change her life forever. She ran away. With James. No notice, no explanation, just a desperate flight from everything that suffocated her. She left behind a life of opulence and security, never looking back, convinced that this love, this adventure, was her escape. But she had no idea what was waiting for her. Lily had always lived a life of luxury. She was used to fine dining, extravagant parties, and a life where everything was easy and predictable. But when she ran away with James, everything changed. For the first time, she felt free, free from her father's control, free from the life that had been planned out for her. With James, life was simple and raw. They lived in a small, modest apartment, where every meal was homemade, and every day felt like an adventure. James was charismatic, full of energy, and passionate about his dreams. At first, Lily admired how different his world was compared to hers. They spent their days walking through parks, talking about their hopes for the future, and making love without any of the pressures she'd felt back home. There was something intoxicating about the way James looked at her, like she was the only person in the world who mattered. For Lily, this was the love story she had always imagined, a life far from the glitz and glamour she'd been born into. It felt like a fresh start. But as the days passed, little things began to change. It was subtle at first, small signs that she ignored, thinking they were just part of adjusting to this new life. She chalked it up to the stress of starting fresh. After all, no one ever said leaving everything behind would be easy. It wasn't long before cracks started to form in their perfect world. James's temper began to show itself, and it happened in the most unexpected ways. At first, it was over something trivial, like a disagreement about where to go for dinner. Then, the arguments became more intense. He'd snap at her for little mistakes, calling her careless or too naive. But it wasn't just the arguments. James would slam doors when he was upset, or sometimes stay silent for hours, leaving Lily to wonder what she had done wrong. The first time it happened, Lily felt a rush of panic. She had never seen this side of James before. But he quickly apologized, telling her it was just stress from their new life together. "I'm sorry, babe," he would say, his eyes full of regret. "I didn't mean to blow up on you." And in those moments, she would forgive him, convinced that their relationship was just going through a rough patch. After all, every couple has their issues, right? But the outbursts became more frequent. There were days when James would lash out over nothing at all, things that didn't seem to matter in the grand scheme of life. He'd accuse her of not understanding him, of not being there for him in the way he needed. Lily would try to explain herself, but the more she did, the angrier he became. The arguments escalated quickly, leaving her feeling small, lost, and confused. She'd apologize, even when she wasn't at fault, just to make the tension go away. It was easier than fighting back. As the weeks turned into months, the small apartment started to feel more like a cage. James became possessive, telling Lily that she didn't need to have friends anymore. "You don't need them, babe. They won't understand you like I do." At first, Lily didn't mind. She had always been close to James, and his desire to keep her by his side felt like love. But soon, he began to push her further away from her family. "Your dad is probably still angry with you for running away. Do you want to face that?" James would say, planting seeds of doubt in her mind. "You've made your choice. Going back to them would just prove you're weak. Don't let them control you anymore." Lily, desperate to make her new life work, began to believe him. She thought about her father, how he had never understood her, how he had always pushed her into making decisions she didn't want. She convinced herself that going back would mean admitting she couldn't handle her own life. She didn't want to be the kind of daughter who couldn't stand on her own 2 feet. James's words were like a drug. They started to cloud her judgment, and before long, Lily stopped reaching out to her friends. She stopped replying to her mother's texts. She stopped thinking about the life she had left behind. At first, she thought it was all part of adjusting to her new world. But the deeper she sank into James's web, the more she realized how alone she truly was. There was no one to turn to, and the person she had once trusted most, James, was now the one pulling the strings. The physical abuse started like any other night. James had been drinking a bit more than usual. At first, Lily thought it was just a bad mood or a long day. But soon, his temper flared. One minute he was calm, the next he was shouting at her for something small. It didn't even make sense. "You think you know everything, huh?" he yelled, slamming his hand on the table so hard the dishes rattled. Lily was stunned. She had never seen him this angry before. Before she could say anything, he grabbed her arm tightly. "You're worthless," he screamed, his face close to hers, his breath stinking of alcohol. It was like someone had flipped a switch, and the man she loved was suddenly someone she didn't even recognize. Lily stood there, frozen in shock, not knowing what to do. She never thought he was capable of this. But she didn't leave. She was scared to. If she went back to her family, she knew they'd be angry with her for running away in the first place. She would be a disappointment. So, instead of leaving, she stayed. After that night, things didn't get better. James apologized, but it didn't feel real. It was like he was just saying the words to make her stop asking questions. Over the next few months, his behavior got worse. James started bringing other women into their home, women he met at bars or on the street. He'd flirt with them in front of Lily, make her feel like she wasn't good enough. He'd laugh, saying, "You wouldn't get it. She's fun. You're too serious." Lily felt humiliated. He was mocking her loyalty, making her feel worthless. But whenever she tried to say anything, he'd just brush her off. "You're overreacting," he'd tell her. "Why are you so upset? She means nothing to me." Each time it happened, Lily felt more trapped. She wanted to leave. But every time she thought about it, the fear took over. She didn't want to go back to her father's anger. So, she stayed silent, even though it hurt. The more time passed, the worse it got. Lily began to feel like a shadow of the person she used to be. She wasn't the confident, independent woman who had once fought for her own happiness. James had slowly torn her down, piece by piece. He constantly made cruel comments about her. He'd say things like, "Look at you. You've gained weight. No one would want you now." Or he'd say, "You're not as smart as you think. Nobody cares what you say." Every word dug deeper into her self-esteem. She couldn't look in the mirror without seeing a stranger. She felt ugly, stupid, and lost. James made sure Lily believed she couldn't survive without him. "You think you can leave? Your father won't want you back. You're too weak to make it on your own," he'd say, planting those thoughts in her head until she believed them. James knew exactly how to control her. He made sure Lily felt completely alone. Whenever she tried to reach out to someone, he would stop her. If she tried calling a friend or family member, he would be there, stopping her, making sure she couldn't talk to anyone. He'd leave her alone for days, acting like he didn't care. Then when he returned, it was the same cruel words. "You can't leave. You're nothing without me." Your family won't take you back. They'll just be disappointed in you again. The more he told her these things, the more she believed them. She started to feel like he was the only person who could take care of her. She couldn't go back to her family, they wouldn't want her anymore. James made sure of that. Lily was trapped in her own thoughts. She didn't know who to trust. She didn't know what was real anymore. James's words became her reality. She was stuck. 2 years have passed since Lily ran away with James, and in that time, the man she thought she loved has turned into a monster. What started as small arguments and moments of tension quickly spiraled into something darker. James began controlling her every move, telling her what to wear, who to talk to, and where she could go. He made her feel small and worthless, like she was nothing without him. But the worst part? He started breaking her down mentally. Every time Lily tried to leave, James would twist her words, make her question her thoughts, and play on her insecurities. This wasn't just physical abuse, it was psychological. He gaslighted her into thinking she was crazy for even considering leaving. He'd say things like, "You'll never survive without me," or, "You're just imagining things, Lily. This isn't abuse, you're overreacting." Slowly, Lily's confidence shattered. She couldn't trust her own mind anymore, couldn't trust her own decisions. She felt like she was losing herself. One evening, after another brutal argument with James, Lily's world came crashing down. She'd spent the last few years convinced that there was no way out, that no one would ever accept her back after everything she'd done. But then, out of the blue, she got a call from an old friend, someone she hadn't heard from in years. Her childhood friend, Emily, told her that her father, Richard Harper, had been asking about her. Richard wasn't just asking, he was still holding out hope that Lily would return to him. That conversation hit Lily like a ton of bricks. The person she had feared facing most, her father, was the one who still cared, who still wanted her back. That single phone call reignited something in Lily, a sense of longing for the life she left behind. She wanted to feel loved again, to feel safe. More than anything, she wanted freedom from James and the nightmare she'd been living. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind raced, and for the first time in years, she thought, maybe I can escape this. The next day, Lily made a decision. She wasn't going to stay trapped anymore. It wasn't going to be easy, but she couldn't go on like this. James had gone out for the day, and it was the perfect opportunity. Lily packed only the essentials, her passport, a few clothes, and some money she had saved over time. As she grabbed her things, she felt the weight of fear and courage mixing inside her. Her heart raced. What if James came home early? What if he found her? She knew it wasn't going to be simple. James was manipulative and dangerous. But she couldn't stay a prisoner in her own life any longer. With shaky hands, she left the house. Every step felt like a countdown, but she was determined. As she walked away from the place that had once been her home, the life she had once chosen, she didn't look back. Her destination was clear. She was going to her parents' mansion, the place she had sworn she'd never return to. Lily was going home, but this time, it wasn't a simple return. It was a reclamation of her life, her sanity, and her future. After 2 long, grueling years, Lily Harper finally returns to the family that once doted on her. Her arrival isn't met with the joyous reunion she expected. Instead, Richard Harper, her billionaire father, and Olivia, her mother, are initially frozen in shock. The mansion's grand doors swing open to reveal Lily, standing on the threshold of a life she once knew but now feels foreign. Her parents' first reaction is a mixture of relief and rage. They had long feared something terrible had happened to their daughter, but seeing her now sends a wave of anger through Richard. It's clear they've been waiting for this moment but didn't know if they should welcome her back or punish her for the pain and embarrassment her disappearance caused. Despite the anger that simmers beneath the surface, Richard and Olivia welcome her back with open arms, relieved that she's alive, but the tension between them all is thick. Lily knows she's entering a battlefield. Every gesture, every word, is weighted with unspoken judgments. Still, the warmth of her parents' embrace feels like the safest place she's been in a long time, and for the first time in years, she allows herself to feel like the daughter she once was. Once inside the comfort of her childhood home, with the weight of the outside world finally off her shoulders, Lily is overcome with emotion. The pent-up fear, anxiety, and pain she's endured for the last 2 years come crashing down. Sitting at the family's grand dining table, surrounded by the familiar, luxurious furnishings that used to comfort her, she begins to speak, her voice trembling at first but slowly gaining strength as she tells them everything. She doesn't hold back. She tells her parents about James, the man she thought she loved, the man who tricked her into believing that a life with him would be better than anything her wealthy family could offer. She shares the horror of the psychological abuse, the isolation, and the constant manipulation. Her voice cracks as she recounts how James made her feel worthless, making her believe that she was too weak to leave him, and that her own family would never accept her back. As the words pour out, Richard and Olivia listen in silence, their faces unreadable. It's as if they are hearing an unfamiliar version of their daughter, one they never knew existed. The happy, confident young woman they once knew has been replaced by a broken, fearful shell. Their anger shifts to sorrow, and it's clear that Lily's suffering has changed everything between them. As Lily finishes telling her story, Richard sits back, as he processes what she said. Initially, his anger flared up when he heard how she had eloped and betrayed his trust. But now, after hearing the depth of the abuse and manipulation Lily suffered, his anger slowly morphs into disbelief. His emotions are intense. He feels guilt, regret, and a sharp realization dawning in his mind. Richard has been furious at Lily for abandoning the family, for choosing a man he saw as a fool. He thought James was just some rebellious, misguided guy who had taken advantage of his daughter's naivety. But the more Lily speaks, the more the picture becomes clear. It's not just about love and loss, it's about revenge. And the truth hits Richard like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, everything changes. As Richard reflects on the details Lily has shared, he begins to connect dots he never thought to connect before. He remembers James's name, his backstory, how he claimed to come from a poor family with a tragic history. Something about it all felt off, but Richard had dismissed it as nothing more than coincidence. Then it hits him like a thunderclap. James isn't just some random poor guy who swept Lily off her feet. James is the son of a man Richard wronged years ago, a man whose life he destroyed, though he never knew it at the time. Richard's betrayal led to the downfall of James's father, which ultimately caused his death. It was a careless, yet fatal decision that Richard had made in the past, and he had no idea the far-reaching consequences it would have. The realization that James's entire mission had been to use Lily as a pawn in a calculated revenge plot shatters Richard's heart. What he thought was a love story turned out to be the ultimate revenge, meticulously planned and executed with precision. Every part of James's abuse toward Lily was designed not just to break her, but to break Richard, to make him suffer for the wrongs of his past. James never loved Lily. It was never about love. It was never even about her at all. James's sole goal was revenge. Revenge on the man who had destroyed his family. He had worked his way into her life, pretending to be the poor, sweet lover she always dreamed of. But in reality, he was nothing more than a predator, calculating every move. Every tear Lily shed, every moment of confusion she experienced, was part of a much larger plan. The pain he inflicted on her wasn't just for his satisfaction, it was meant to destroy everything Richard held dear. Richard's world is turned upside down as he begins to understand the full scope of the damage. His daughter had been a pawn in a dangerous game, and he never even knew it. All the while, he believed he was dealing with an unfortunate mistake, but the truth is far darker than he ever imagined. Now that Lily knows the truth about James, she's forced to confront her own emotions. She feels deceived, trapped, and heartbroken all over again. She may have been manipulated, but now she can see the full picture, and it gives her strength. But the real question remains, what now? Her entire life, her entire marriage, has been based on a lie. She's faced unimaginable pain, but now she has to decide if she can move forward with her life, or if the weight of everything James did will haunt her forever. She knows she can't erase the past, but what will she do now that she knows the truth? The story leaves us with lingering questions. Has James really achieved his revenge? Or, after all his scheming, is he left hollow and haunted by the destruction he's caused? Will he face the consequences of his actions, or will his life spiral into further chaos? Lily, however, now holds the power to choose her future. Will she move forward and rebuild, or will the scars of her past define her? Let us know if you want a part 2, as the story continues to unfold.